What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. In today's video, I've got the entirety of my computer reflecting off my glasses. Goodness, man. We're going over the Hisui Cup today. Now, if you remember the last time we had Hisui Cup, it was literally just a Sinnoh Cup plus Hisuian forms. It seems in this rendition, I should say, we're getting a completely new and different meta, and I am always here for a new meta, so let's take a look at some picks that I like, and then obviously you're going to go through the 5 teams that I think are going to be some of the strongest to start the cup off with. Obviously, things are going to just kind of evolve as they do. We have this meta for 2 weeks, so whether you play it all 2 weeks or you get bored and tired and go back to Open Great League or Ultra League, I mean, I don't blame you either way, to be completely honest, but I want to pick out some things that I think are going to be very interesting in this meta. I'm going to go down the rankings as I usually do. Umbreon is the first thing that stands out to me when we go down the rankings. It's just so consistent, and it can beat so many things that you know, it's a good Lickitung answer, and everybody loves running Lickitung in Great League now, let's be honest. Good Cresselia answer, can beat Mantine, which is always nice. Obviously it kind of struggles a bit against Bastion because of that bulk, and Machamp and all the other fighters are probably going to beat it pretty badly, so there's always that. But it gets a narrow matchup against Shadow Gligar here, so it's always worth noting that just Umbreon being as just absolutely neutral and as strong as it is, it's always a good safe swap on any team, especially when you're trying to draw out a fighter, right? So maybe you put your Bastiodon in the back, use your Umbreon to lure out the fighter, right? That's kind of like what this team in the first year that we're going to go over in a little bit. It's using Lickitung to draw out the fighter, so the Bastiodon is hopefully unopposed. So, as we go down, I like Cresselia in this meta a lot. I'm a huge fan of Cresselia. It covers so many things with its move coverage, and then it just really loses to things like Bastiodon, and then other things that maybe out damage it or out bulk it. So it's still very consistent. None of its losses are so hard that you can't, you know, make any leverage on a matchup. So it's always worth keeping in mind that Cresselia is just like Umbreon, it's extremely consistent, extremely bulky, and it's just a really good pivot or a very good, you know, lead option if you want to try and counter, you know, those Whisk Cashes on the lead, for example. Another Pokemon in this meta that I think is really good is going to be Steelix. I think Steelix is going to be disgustingly strong. It may not show up until number 19 on the rankings, but it beats Bastiodon without baiting in every single shield scenario. It can handle Mantine and most of the other flyers. It can beat Gligar with 2 shields, and excuse me, it really only has to worry about matchups where there's like a fighter involved, like Lucario would absolutely destroy it. But even like Lickitung, Ninetale, like Ninetale's obviously fire type, right? But like Lickitung, Whiscash, like those are not good matchups for, well, I should say Whiscash is a terrible matchup. Lickitung is more neutral, but we've all played that matchup out before, and you know that there's a win condition if you play it right. You know, if you play Psychic Fangs, for example, you can make it through a Lickitung. So Abomasnow's another Pokemon here before I, you know, wrap my tongue around my neck too many times here. Keep talking in circles. Abomasnow gets a lot of, I thought I heard some thunder or something outside. Abomasnow gets a lot of really interesting and good wins in this meta. You get Whiscash, obviously, for being a grass type, but you also get wins over Cresselia, Lickitung, and Umbreon. And I feel like those are going to be good enough to make Abomasnow very potent in this meta. It's got Icy Wind now, unless you want to run Weather Ball, which you can. But Icy Wind gives it that debuffing ability, which makes it a really interesting lead, and also allows it to take some matchups that it otherwise couldn't before. Talking next, the thing that I'm going to find down here, if I can find him. I know he's down here. Toxicroak and Drapion are 2 favorites of mine as well. Toxicroak just having some amazing coverage and moves, and is just incredibly inconsistent Pokemon. Really only has to worry about flyers and obviously Cresselia, and it's even got Shadow Ball to be able to hit Cresselia back. But the thing I really came down here for is Probopass. Probopass beats the Mantine, Bastiodon, Cresselia, Umbreon, Lickitung. I feel like that's going to be the 5 most used Pokemon in this meta. So Probopass with Zap Cannon, hello, yes please. Excuse me, I still got the cough, man. I'm sorry. But Probopass looks extremely interesting to me. You just have to make sure you back it up with some options that are going to be able to beat things like Whiscash, Steelix, Machamp, etc. So perhaps, you know, you want to use your Cresselia. You got a Lickitung that, you know, I feel like Lickitung and Probopass, which is really weird because they're both weak to fighting. Like There was thunder. I just heard it again. There's a storm here as we record this video. How exciting. I love thunderstorms. I really do. Let me know in the comments if you like thunderstorms. I just love listening to them. They're just so wonderful. Peaceful. Until they, you know, shake your entire building and make you wonder if you're gonna die. All right, so we like Probopass a lot. Obviously, if you've got a Pachirisu, could be a good meta to break it out, but obviously, it's just a very bulky Pachirisu is a bulky squirrel that only does electric type damage, so you might have a problem against any of the ground types or anything that just can straight up out bulk or out damage it. And I think that's pretty much the most of it. And Polion, I think, could be interesting as well. Very consistent damage. But for the most part, that's the entirety of the things that I expect in this meta to be super, you know, super sleeper, super good. So let's take a look at the teams now, because I want to make sure that we get a chance to take a look at these. So the first team is going to be the Mantine, Bastion, Lickitung core. As long as you don't see a Probopass, you're chilling. Team's got some really good letter grades here. If you look over here on the side, you got an A for coverage, A for bulk, A for consistency, and this team is fairly RPS. So you do have to be careful with alignment on this team. Hopefully Lickitung is strong enough to be able to get you that alignment if you had a bad lead with Mantine. But overall, I feel like this team would be it would struggle quite a bit against an opposing Bastiodon lead. You'd have to really team effort and play that out. Perhaps maybe you use a different safe swap than Lickitung to make them want to pivot out of their Bastiodon lead so that your Mantine can maybe get aligned onto something else. Perhaps even, for example, you use Steelix, which definitely would make a Bastiodon pivot out. You know, you can swap things in and out of these teams as long as they fulfill a similar role. And always, you know, you guys know me. I'm always happy to help you out in the comments. If you leave a comment if you're not sure, you know, hey, what should I sub out Lickitung for in Team 1? I'll drop a comment. I'll tell you. Steelix. Steelix is probably the best one. You could also even do like Wall Rain or something too if you wanted to. You threaten with that Earthquake, right? So the only things that beat this team, which are Probopass. Oh, Magnezone is another one that I meant to go point out in the rankings. Magnezone could be very strong with that Wild Charge and that consistent Volt Switch damage, able to go through Bastiodon, and it's basically if it beats the Bastiodon Mantine core, it's not that bad. It's pretty decent. So so this team really only gets broken up by a couple things. Oh my goodness, it just keeps coming, dude. And Bastiodon would be difficult, like we said, but everything else, this team has some sort of coverage for, so it's a very strong team. I like it a lot. Sudowoodo also could be really interesting as well, being a counter user with a rock typing to beat some flyers. I dig it, man. Let's get into the next team here. All right, getting into team number 2, we've got Cresselia Double Steel. The only thing that I can really see off the rip here being a problem for this team would be a fire type like Kanto Ninetales. We're not quite as strong in the letter department as the previous team, but like we said, you can swap in and out. You could go Cresselia, Bastiodon, Steelix. You could go, you know, you could do any number of things with a team like this if you want to. But really what we wanted to do here was put Cresselia or something very hard anti-flyer on the lead. Have Lucario be the sweeper. Steelix is the safe swap to draw out, you know, the fire or the ground, right? Like the Whiscash. Pretty much everything that you'd be looking at. Oh, that's going to be a loud one. Everything you'd be looking to draw out here, essentially would get beat by Crest. So you just go for Grass Knot, go, you know, for whatever you need to go for. So Kanto Ninetales is really the biggest issue here. I guess, you know, Kulava and Rapidash also come in as fire types as a problem, and Haunter. But honestly, I feel like this team is super solid, and it does have a lot of play into the meta here. So you can see the only things you get beat by are those 4, and everything else you got coverage for, which in my opinion is pretty darn solid. All right, before I cough up another lung, goodness, let's get into the next team here. All right, we got the next team here. This is a Gligar Munchlax core with an Umbreon save swap. If you want to, you could put Lickitung in place of the Munchlax, but I put Munchlax back there because with Tackle, it's able to just destroy Lickitung because Lickitung's taking neutral damage from the tackles, and Munchlax is double resisting those licks. So you've got 2 hard Lickitung answers in the back as well, as also having a super strong Gligar. You've got Bulldoze coverage on Munchlax, so if you wanted to save swap the Munchlax instead, draw out, like, you know, a Steel of some sort, Bulldoze is a threatening move for those ground. Letter grade here, we've got 3 A's and a B. We got safety as a B. Again, I think this meta is going to be very RPS, so it's important to find the things that can kind of break that up a bit. But aside from the, you know, fact that you've got the RPS inherently in here. Looking at the matchups here on the spread, Umbreon is probably the most difficult thing for this team because it kind of technically beats everything on the team in a one-to-one situation. So if you run into an Umbreon, you probably have to make sure that you take an effort to make an effort to team effort. That makes sense, right? English, man. But Umbreon's the only thing that this team really can't handle. Everything else you've got coverage for, which makes this a very strong team in my opinion. And again, you could swap out Umbreon for Lickitung. You could swap out Munchlax for Umbreon. You could swap out anything of these things. It's basically fighting weak versus fighting strong, right? That's kind of what you're looking for. As long as you've got a pick that you prefer, that you want to put in that slot, you can basically do that. This team is meant to draw out a fighter, let Gligar handle it, and then it's going to be able to take things out with, either your Munchlax or your Umbreon, whichever one you'd prefer to sweep with. It's a very bulky team as well. If you put Lickitung in especially, this is an extremely bulky team that has a lot of promise in this meta. All right, getting into team number 4. Now, this is an interesting one to me because we're utilizing the Magnezone. Mantine is in the back, and so is Cresselia. Again, we're pivoting around that fighter, anti-fighter duo here. So we have Magnezone in the lead because it's able to put a lot of pressure on Bastiodons, able to put a lot of pressure on basically anything that's not a ground type, to be completely honest. And you've got two very strong answers to the ground types in this meta in the back. I think Steelix would probably be the hardest thing for this team to deal with. If Mantine would move his fat wing head out of the way. A, B, C, B is your letter grades here. With a lot of answers to Mantine. The whole team has strong answers to Mantine and is very strong against most other common things you're going to see in this meta. Again, Bastiodon does get a win here. You could replace the Mantine with a Gligar if you wanted to. You could put Gligar in the back as well. The only reason I didn't is because of how much damage those Scalds do from Whiscash. And that would probably be a big thing that you would not want to deal with in this team. So, but aside from the Umbreon, this team only really has an issue again with Steelix and Luxray. And like I said, if you want to, you could change out some of this team to make it a little bit more strong against Steelix or Umbreon. This is basically supposed to be a team that just covers the Magnezone, right? So if you want to, you could put something else in the back. If you want to, you could like do Abomasnow in the back to cover the ground types, but then you risk being weak to fighting. So you have to make that call based on the teams that you're seeing when the meta actually, or when the cup rotates in. Perhaps maybe there's not as many people running fighter types, so you want to go ABA to fighting and run Abomasnow and Magnezone on the same team in the front back. So you could do that as well. So we'll get into the last team here. It's a very strong team. I love using Magnezone whenever we get the opportunity in a good meta. Last time we had the Sinnoh Cup, it was a lot of fun to use. Did very well. And I gained a lot of points with it if I remember right. It's been a while though. So anyway, let's get into the last team here. A little bit more of a different story here. So we're not really necessarily ABB against fighting, right? Abomasnow, obviously, but you've got two waters in the back with Whiscash, and we've also got Tentacruel. If you get worried about fighters, you can put Mantine over the Whiscash. But this team, I like the Tentacruel safe swap here because even if they answer you with a Steel, you still have that Scald for super effective against, for example, the Steelix and the Bastiodon. So you have that ability to land that Scald. And Whiscash, you all know from Open Great League how stupid consistent Whiscash is, and it's able to just do so much damage. You really, only have to worry about Mantine being a bit strong into this team, I would say. So if you see a lot of Mantine, perhaps maybe you change up your strategy. Instead of Whiscash, you could use something else that is able to beat it, Maybe you just slot your Pachirisu in there just for the fun of it, right? Straight Bs and then a C for consistency. Again, this team is really focused around making Abomasnow work. You're using, Tentacruel as your safe swap to draw out maybe that Gligar, which you can then farm down with the Powder Snows. And this is really just making Abomasnow able to thrive in a meta where there's very few fire types and there's only a couple of fighters, right? So if you expect a lot more people to be running things like Whiscash or Gligar, then Abomasnow is going to be a super solid core breaker. So it's going to this one really is going to depend on how the meta shakes out, because as you can see, there are a couple of things that make this team very uncomfortable. I don't know if I like being super weak to Mantine like this, but obviously you know that Mantine and Abomasnow is a lot better than having Mantine versus Whiscash. I almost have the idea to bring Blizzard Whiscash back for this meta just because of the fact that Mantine probably is going to be all over the place. But everything else, you've got coverage on the meta, and like I said, even against, you know, the Bastion, right? You could lure it out, and then even then, if you wanted to, you could load up on energy with Whiscash. It really depends on the team and obviously what you're facing, but you know, super solid strategy. Could use some tweaking probably once the meta comes out and we see what is actually being used. But on the rip, I think this team could evolve into something that's going to be extremely useful. Abomasnow is just such a good core breaker in the first place, and this meta is it could give it a place to go. So that's going to do it for me for today with the Hisui Cup teams. I did a write-up in my Discord on like Tuesday. And if getting early information is valuable to you at all, as well as getting access to my teams and whatever else that I'm doing before it hits YouTube, check out the link in the description of the pinned comment to join the Patreon server. It's Patreon and the YouTube membership, so if you get either one, you can join my Discord server and get access to all that stuff, plus a fantastic community. And if you're looking to get some coaching before the end of the season, remember we've got about a month left in the season. I'm on Metafy. Go ahead and check the link in the pinned comment description for that as well. And if you guys get any spicy, super awesome Hisui Cup battles, feel free to send them in for Shoutcasting. I always wouldn't mind that. Link's also down below and in the pinned comment description. So thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.